All right, so you could play with this in any order, these postures. You can play with, manipulating the sequence. I wanted you guys to have this be like your home project, your home work assignment, if you will, to really take control of your practice and make it your practice, not what I like to do and not what our other teachers love to do. And that's fine. I love that. I mean, that's the beauty of yoga, and that's why we have yoga teachers. But I want you to have some control of your practice and figure out really, oh shit, I have to go in there and I have to know what's going on in my body so I know what to set up for my body. And a lot of people will say, well, I can't do that. That's why I have you as a teacher. But you can. And that's why we have teachers, so that we can continue to practice at home and in studio together. So throughout this practice, using any tools that help you to center and calm and relax. Because at home, it's very hard to practice because you get distracted by family members, animals, pets, children, whatever, husbands that are needy, wives that are needy. Sorry, guys. Or even, for me, oh, there's a dust bunny in that corner. Oh, what is that? The big pile of dog hair that's like found its way under my couch. These things are distracting. Or you hear the buzzer go off of the laundry. It's just, you don't need that, right? So music, earbuds, use this video as a tool, not as a crutch, and not as the only way that you know how to practice yoga. Use it as a tool to learn how to create your own practice. So you may have to watch this through and then go back and set up your own practice. So use this as a tutorial or as a walkthrough, not really a step-by-step practice, all right? As always, text or email with questions about any of the postures. And if you are a current paying member, I'd love to set up a live online meeting with you, especially if we're not in studio right now because of the whole lockdown situation. But please get a hold of me if you have questions about any of the setups. If one of these setups isn't working for you, get a hold of me and we'll do something online together. We can set up a live Facebook or a live Zoom class, just one-on-one, where we can go through prop setup. So this video, I'm going to set you up for your own at-home restorative practice. I'm going to show you the postures. You can pause the video and stay in them as long as you'd like. Most of these poses you could be in anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, maybe even 7 or 8 minutes on some of them. So I'll give you a setup, prop setup, and get you settled in, and then you can pause the video and set a timer or play your favorite song and just kind of go to that length. So, if you've got like a 5-minute song that you dig or like a 3-minute song, you can play a couple songs to last a couple postures, right? And let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is feet at the wall. And by the way, these postures, this restorative sequence is designed to help reduce sciatica issues and pain. So just something to think about if you have that as an issue as a result of piriformis syndrome, a type piriformis. This will help kind of open up the piriformis. So the first pose I'm going to do, get you set up for, is at the wall with your feet at the wall, and it's cat-cow tilts on your back with your feet at the wall. So hopefully you have some wall space. If you don't, you could probably find a chair, like a metal chair, and put it right at the end of your mat, and then you could put your heels on the chair, right? Though it is nicer to have a wall so you can have your feet flat on the wall. So I'm going to lay down here and have my feet at the wall with my hips under my knees. So my feet aren't up and they're not down. So it's not a massive ankle squat. Heels and knees are in line. And I've got my hips right under my knees. Shoulders are open on the floor. Got enough space that I can open my arms out alongside or have the hands down next to my hips. We're going to take these cat-cow tilts here. So the first one is going to be an inhale. So you're going to tilt your pelvis down to the floor and open your heart up to the ceiling. And then you're going to exhale, lift your pelvis up and roll up off the floor with your low back. And then inhale down and tilt your pelvis down towards the floor. Your tailbone tilts down to the floor, chest opens. And then as you exhale, round your spine and lift your tailbone up to the ceiling. So it's a little warm up here just to get you settled into your body and your breath. Inhale, tilt. You could even skip the contact of the back on the floor altogether if you're feeling okay here. Exhale, round. So previously I was rolling my spine down and then tilting, so you can kind of skip that. Exhale and then Inhale, tap your tailbone down. Exhale, lift your tailbone up. Okay, so this gets a little bit into the core if you skip that spine roll. Tilt, inhale, exhale, tuck. Inhale, tilt, exhale, tuck. And just one more. Inhale, tilt, and exhale, tuck. All right, and then roll down. All right, so the next thing I'm going to set you up in, and this one you'll stay in for maybe like 2 to 3 minutes on each side. So it's going to be the number 4 stretch. You cross your right ankle over your left thigh and roll your right thigh open. Keep your left foot at the wall and your back relaxed on the floor, shoulders open on the floor. Flex your right ankle, and then you can pause here for just a few moments. If you feel like you really need to walk your foot down and get a little closer to the wall, you could. You could even walk your foot up a little higher if this is too intense with the left knee at a 90-degree bend. So if you get closer to the wall, it is going to fire up this outer hip opener a little bit more, which will take you into more of a yen practice, which is fine. So you can scooch closer to the wall and get a little bit more compact. Up close to the wall. And then that's a bit more of a hip opener here. So again, if you don't want to really have to work to hold this or feel extra sensation and you just want a relaxing practice, I would say scooch back and just have your ankle on your left thigh comfortably. And go into your breath patterns here. Feel where your hips are. So if your right hip is pulling over too much or your left hip is pulling over too much, and then just kind of feel that placement in the middle, and then push your right knee towards the wall. If you feel like your head is falling back too much, pad up your head with a little blanket or a little extra pillow or something just to have your forehead so it's not lower than your chin. All right, and then you're going to take this again about 3 minutes each side. So after about 3 minutes on this side, you can switch out your foot, maybe even in between sides, take your feet up the wall and just relax them and then switch your sides out. All right. So another way you could play with this number 4 shape is have a bolster under your back and your left foot up on the wall. And that would give you a little bit more of an incline. So it's up to you if you want to play with that. And then you could take legs up in the air in between sides. So when you finish both sides of your number 4 stretch, that nice little piriformis and outer left hip opener, you can take both legs up the wall. Once you've gotten both sides in equally, just a little brief rest here. You can wiggle your toes around a little bit. Maybe even take the soles of your feet down, knees open into a reclining bound angle just for a moment to stretch out through the inner hips. And then we're going to come up to standing, so you can roll off to the right or the left and use your hands to push up. We're going to use the wall or a chair if you don't have a wall space handy for a little pyramid pose. So I'm going to take my hands about shoulder height, well actually a little lower than shoulder height because when I walk back, my shoulders are going to lower down. So this is a pyramid pose at the wall. And it's just something to get you up off the floor. My restorative practice, I love to take it up and down. So it doesn't always have to just be lying on the floor, rolling around and laying on bolsters. Downward facing dog, a standing stretch, a gentle sun salutation. Great ways to break up the tension of being on the floor because sometimes being on the floor and laying hurts. And restorative can actually hurt bodies more than heal. So be cautious of that. This is something I love to break up the monotony of pressing or laying on the floor. So I'm pressing into the wall with my hands, pushing back into the heel. This is releasing so much low back issue for me. I'm having a lot of low back pain lately in my back bends. It's an injury that I've been recovering from for about 2 months now. And so this feels fantastic. I am pressing down into my left heel and then pressing back into my right foot, but pushing both hands into the wall. And when I push both hands into the wall, it's almost like my right leg is doing nothing. And that's fine. My right leg is just basically there. And just about a minute here. This is just kind of an in-between pose. And then after just about 10 breaths there, you can start to press up to stand and shake your hands out. Here, take a big inhale, stretch your arms up, and exhale. Release. And then hands come back to the wall, and I'm going to step my right heel back, just about a 2 to 3 foot step back. And then again, once I've stepped back, my shoulders lower down to about the wrist height. So I start lower than wrist height with my hands. Step back, play with that, situate your footing. Left toes are going to stay straight forward. So even though that left leg isn't the big hero of the pose here, it's still going to be aware. It's still going to be there. It's not just like slopping around. Push back into your right heel, and then again, press into the wall with your hands. Feel a stretch in the right calf muscle. So a lot of times that sciatica pain will go down to your, that's the symptom of it. That's the sign of it, is it goes down to your heel, into your calf. And so this is going to stretch out that calf area and hopefully relieve some pain on your back. All right, and then after a few breaths there, you can step away from the wall. Inhale, stretch your arms up. And then exhale, let's just take an easy forward fold here. So blocks and bend the knees if you need. Relax your low back. Okay, we're going to take this into Balasana, child's pose on the floor. So you can just drop down to hands and knees here. And then I'm going to grab my bolster and situate my bolster, knees apart, big toes touch. And I'm going to draw the bolster right up to the inner thigh, so I'm not sitting on the bolster. And then I'm going to rest out over the bolster. And you can be here for as long as you want. I mean, you can go in. This is one of those postures you could hold for like 8 minutes if you want. So as long as you've got to spare, as long as you can comfortably stay here without pain in your ankles or your hips, and rest your forehead on either, your hands or a blanket, right? Or you can rest on your cheek. So I'm not a fan of the cheek thing. I like my forehead. This actually is just not going well for me at all today. There we go. So pad yourself up, get yourself cozy. There we go. Just gotta sometimes find it. All right. And then let your back release down, let your hips drop down. So this is a great place also for a blanket to kind of wad this guy up and put it under your belly so that you're not hyperextending into your back. Now that's the ticket. Now I feel it. So I'm hyperextensive in my low back. And when I lay on this bolster, I get this extra extension. So the blanket rolled up under my belly and my ribs lets my back drop. And that's what I'm looking for there, is this release in the low back and a dropping of the hips towards the heels. Okay. All right. So set yourself up and pause the video, and I'll meet up with you after you've enjoyed Balasana. All right, so after your child's pose, restorative version, when you're ready to come out of it, place your palms on the floor, roll yourself up slowly. You can take a little head circle side to side, or a little head roll side to side, maybe even a seated cat-cow here. Inhale, open your chest, look up, exhale, round your spine. All right, maybe even a little side stretch. Okay, and then we're going to come into a supported pigeon pose, Ekapataraj Kapotasana. I'm going to use the bolster again. I'm going to take the bolster out in front of me, hands and knees, take my knees back in together just to get out of that ankle plantar flexion that we were in the stretch. I'm going to sit back on my toes for a moment and give my ankles a relief from that pull. And now I'm stretching the back of my ankles and the heels out. For Ekapataraj Kapotasana, the one-leg king pigeon pose with the support, you could use several props. So I'm using a bolster, and I'll probably use the blanket. The block might come in handy for your hip or your forehead. And any extra padding that you think you might need. I'll show you 2 different variations for a sleeping pigeon, which is the restorative version of this. So I'm going to take my hands to the floor on either side of the bolster. I'm going to take my right knee up to the end of the bolster and my left leg back a little bit. And then I'm just going to lift my left knee so I can sweep that left heel over and then set my left knee back down. Now I'm going to take my right knee over just to the end of the bolster, so it's not coming way out off the side of my mat. In fact, it's at a place where I could come up and kneel here and not fall. So my right knee is in line with my right hip, and my left hip is in line with my right heel. And then from here, I'm going to scooch my leg back. Hopefully it doesn't hit the wall. So you don't need to be at the wall for this. You might have to crawl away from it if you're still at the wall. All right, and then from here, I'm just going to snuggle this bolster up and under my belly. So now I've taken it off to the left, which is fine. And then again, I like to have a blanket right up in the belly and then something for my head. Because I want to be able to relax my low back here. And I'm probably going to slide away from the wall a little bit more. I'm too close still. Because I want my left foot to flip back. And you can have your left toes tucked under. That's totally fine. So, or even an extra blanket under your left foot. The blanket could be used, oh my gosh, you could have so many options for this. I could take like 20 minutes to break down this entire option, all the options here. But let's say that left leg needs an extra little lift. So put a blanket under your left leg, right? And then you can just pillow your forehead with your hands. Maybe you don't want the blanket under your belly. Maybe you need the extra blanket under your right hip to pad up the right hip. That puts me at an awkward angle. It makes my left hip go down, so I'm not going to use that. That doesn't work so much for me. That's better. I lower the blanket under my hip down. I still don't like that. It's making my low back extend, and I don't want that. Just for me personally, I don't want that because I know where my struggles are, and it's in that low back. So I need that. I need the rounding here. I need the pressure off my right hip. I don't need more opening in my right hip. I don't have this piriformis syndrome where my piriformis is pressing on the sciatic nerve. So I can still feel a stretch in my outer right hip, right? I'm going to show you the other side. First, though, I want to show you an even gentler modification here would be to take your left thigh up to your right foot. And then you could still fold out here, okay? All right. This actually hurts more in my inner left hip. So for my body and for my makeup, it's easier for me to take my left leg back. Okay, so play with that. I'll show you the other side where I'm using a blanket under my left hip. Okay, so here's the second side. We can have blanket under the hip, bolster, blanket under the belly, maybe a block for your forehead. Sometimes it's nice to have something just for your foot back here. I once again got myself way too close to the wall. So sometimes it's just nice to have that back foot propped up and just let it relax. I mean, no area of your body needs to be tense. So all areas of your body deserve attention. Special support, special propping, special relaxation, right? So think about how much your feet do for you. Maybe in this pose, you want to focus on not digging your toes or pointing your toes or having the perfect alignment. Just let your foot relax. It just sometimes feels so nice to let your feet dangle, right? And just let them, okay? So here I would suggest about 3 minutes on each side, probably no longer than that. And then it gives you a total of 6 minutes in this posture. All right, enjoy. All right, when you're ready to come out of your pigeon pose then, you can press up again with your hands. If you've got anything under your leg, you can kind of kick it off to the side. Get the stuff out of the way so it's not going to get in the way of your movement. I'm going to crawl forward with my right knee or whatever knee you're in, and then situate the left knee back next to my right knee in tabletop pose. And then again here, I'm just going to take my toes up. I'm going to actually windshield wiper my heels side to side. This feels really good to me. And so take anything that feels good. Maybe it's downward facing dog. With the bolster here, I love this right away into downward facing. This is a great setup to segue right into downward facing dog from your pigeon. You can tuck your toes, lift your heels. You can walk your hands forward till your forehead rests on the bolster. If you're still close to the wall, that's even better. You can put your heels up on the wall. I like that. It's nice. Hear my wall creaking? All right, so take a few moments in downward facing dog. If you want to just sit for a moment, The next posture I'm gonna do, and you can just kind of sit and relax while I explain this next posture, is it's a twist. So I'm gonna use the bolster again. It's a real simple twist. You don't have to get too crazy with this, but again, use blankets and blocks as you need to reduce pain. So I'm gonna take my right knee again forward like I'm taking pigeon, and I'm just gonna kind of come to sit on my right hip, left leg back, right leg straight out, and then I'm gonna twist down to the bolster here. So it's a real simple setup. That back leg though, if it feels like it's really working too much, you could always put a block under the back leg. I'd put it on the inner thigh, kind of feels better there. You could also put a blanket under your right hip if your right hip feels like it's too bony on the floor. And then just stay here for about 1.5 to 3 minutes. I wouldn't do any more than 3 minutes on a twist. And I think the best time of especially in an isolated twist like this, 2 minutes, it probably is a good time frame for that. So situate yourself, get yourself cozy, and I'll meet you back here when you're done. All right, and then when you're ready to come up out of this twist off that second side, push your hands up. You can come back into a tabletop position. You can take a moment in child's pose just to recover from the twist. In between sides of that twist, if you kind of fast forward just to see how to get out of it, you could, coming out of one side of that twist, I would say tabletop pose, cat-cow, right? Maybe another downward facing dog in between sides for that twist. And then you could set up for that second side. All right, moving on to the second posture, we're gonna take reclining hero. So we're gonna use a bolster and a blanket. I'm gonna use a blanket under my shins and a bolster behind. Virasana, Supta Virasana. So this one can be tricky for a lot of people. You might even want a second blanket to go behind your knees and between your calves. And then you might wanna prop up the bolster. I like this. There you go, 2 blocks. So it's at an incline, and then my ankles and shins my knees and shins are gonna go here. So it's padded up, knees are together. I'm gonna sit down, come forward, so I'm not sitting on the bolster. And then the blanket here could go between your between your legs, between the backs of your thighs and your hamstrings. And then you can start to recline back. And if you have a third blanket, you might even want to put it under your head. I feel like this blanket's going to serve me better right there, under my hips. So all these suggestions, everybody's got different ones that work better for them. And then I'm going to relax here. If I had 2 extra blocks or a couple of extra pillows that were high enough, I would put them under my hands just to support my arms. But this is fine. I'm only going to stay here for me, I would probably only stay here for like 2 or 3 minutes. But you're welcome to stay here as long as it feels good. And count your breath here. It's a good way to count your time. If you're slowly breathing, it's about 10 breaths per minute. So if you think inhale, slight pause at the top of your inhale, and then exhale, and slight pause at the bottom of your exhale. And take that about 10 times. That'd be a minute. Okay. All right. Enjoy this pose, and I'll catch up with you when you're ready. All right. When you're ready to come out of this reclining hero pose, press down to the floor with your hands and lift up to seated. Come over your knees with your hands into a tabletop position. I'm just going to walk back so my knees are padded up. It's a wider leg. This really doesn't matter. It's just I'm working with my props. And again, here, cat-cow. Open the chest. Exhale, round. And inhale, open. And exhale, round. And then again, you might want to take the hip side to side, a little twisting. If you want downward facing dog, lift up, press back, Adho Mukha Svanasana. All right, so the next posture we're going to work into is a side stretch. I'm going to set this stuff aside. I'm going to take a blanket and roll it up so it's in a quarter fold. I'm going to roll the long side up. And then I'm going to take a second blanket and wrap this blanket so that I've got double blankets going on here. I mean, you can take 2 blankets too, however you want to do this. If you've got a one of those nifty little like bolster pillows at home, you can use that are round. I like rounded instead of the ours are like a rectangular one. It's rectangular. So if you have a round bolster, this is perfect. And even wrapping one of those small bolsters in a blanket would work. So I'm just going to stick with this. But I'm going to lie down. I'm going to come to seated on my right hip and lie down over the right side. My right arm stretches out overhead, and then my left arm comes over. You can take your hand behind. You can interlace your fingers. If you don't want the left arm overhead, if it feels awkward, keep your left hand maybe on your left hip or even just relaxing behind you, as long as that doesn't hurt your left shoulder. We really want to stretch out the left side of the body. So if you need more, put more height under the right, and then even straighten out your legs to the straight back towards the wall. And then you can use your left hand to kind of hold your right arm down. I mean, anything goes, right? Right, and then you can stay here for just about 2 minutes, 3 minutes, because your left shoulder is going to start to get tired. Okay, right, this one's one of my favorites. I like this one a lot. And after about 2 or 3 minutes here, you can switch sides. So again, practice the breathing, counting your breath, moving your breath in through your nose and out, and then we'll catch up when you're ready after both sides. In between sides on this posture, when you're ready to switch sides, you can roll over to your belly. Be careful, that might really hurt. And then crawl forward to your hips instead of your belly. And then lay down just for a moment on your forehead. Okay, and then you can come back up and crawl back and then switch sides. All right, and when you finish both sides on this side lying stretch, you can come back up to seated, over to hands and knees. And then the next pose is just going to act as a counter pose for this, so we'll just go right into that. I'm going to set up for a belly lying shavasana. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is get a bolster and stick it here at the back of my mat with a blanket or a block under the end of the bolster. So it's going to go up at an incline towards the wall or towards the end of my mat. And then I'm going to get a blanket roll again. So I'm going to take this, and you could use that same blanket roll that you just had. Maybe just kind of 2 blankets together, however it works. And roll that up there. Hips. I'm going to come forward a little bit. And then I'm going to lob this up for my forehead a little bit higher than my shoulders. All right, belly lying shavasana. It takes a little extra work to get into it, but it feels so good. There we go. There we go. Now she's working. And then my hands just rest. This feels super good on my back. Stay here for as long as you'd like. Breathe. And just enjoy the release in your back. And when it's time for you to come up out of this, you can simply roll back up to seated. Maybe even just sit on the bolster for a minute. And just sit in and just feel. Just sit in your body and feel the effects of the practice. All right, have fun with your practice and enjoy it. Thanks, yogis.